Hi friends, welcome back to the Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and today I'm really excited because we are starting the first of YNAB Fridays. Now this is an idea that I just came up with. Last week I was trying to think of some ideas of what I wanted to film. I usually have a plan for the whole month, but I just wasn't really feeling inspired by the video ideas that I had. So I reached out to you all, asked you what videos you wanted to see, what questions you had, and I had so many responses saying that you wanted to see more YNAB. So because of that, I had this idea that every Friday I would make a YNAB video, whether that is a budget for me, budget with me, a YNAB basics video, because I know that that is stuff that you all are really interested in and you have a lot of questions about. So I'm hoping if I make this a series, whenever I do talk about YNAB, I'll be able to link you all back to videos that talk about specific parts of YNAB. But I figured in order to start the series off, the only thing that should be like the #1 video of this is the basics of YNAB, which is YNAB's 4 rules. So what I love about YNAB is that it is not just a budgeting software. If you don't know what it is, it stands for You Need a Budget. It is a software, it is also an app, but more than that, they have their whole system. And this whole system, including the app and the budgeting software, is based off of the foundation of the 4 rules. And I think even if you're someone who doesn't necessarily want to use YNAB, all of these 4 rules relate to any sort of budgeting style that you want to do. These for me were really life-changing. When I heard these rules, it just clicked and made sense and gave me a whole new perspective on what budgeting can be. So let's go ahead and get into breaking down YNAB's 4 rules. Rule number 1 is give every dollar a job. This is the foundation of YNAB, the whole system, but it's also the foundation of a zero-based budget. You might have also heard this referred to as income minus expenses equals 0. They're pretty much the exact same thing. The idea is that you are just allocating the money that you have on hand right now, and you know what every penny that you have is doing for you. It is assigned to some category in your budget, and it has a plan. And because of this rule, this means that you are not budgeting some imaginary money that you might have down the road. Instead, you are just focusing on the money that you have right now in your bank account. For me, this was the life-changing part about a zero-based budget. Apps like Mint or other budgeting methods and apps kind of felt weird to me because you were either looking back on your spending to try to make a plan for the future, which just felt like backwards, or you were looking forward into the future, planning out what money you didn't have was going to do for you. And then inevitably, if I ended up getting paid less or more than I thought, or if I didn't get paid when I thought that I was going to, it ruined my whole plan and I had to go back to the drawing board. This ended up really stressing me out. And I always just felt like I was kind of hanging on the edge, hoping that my budget would end up working, because I was either looking forward or looking backward, but wasn't focusing too much on right now. So focusing on the now and only budgeting the money I had on hand made a huge difference for me. Because up until the last job I had, I have never been a salaried worker. I've always had variable income. I really never knew how much I was going to get paid until I got paid. And sometimes I didn't even know when exactly I was going to get paid. And I know a lot of you are in the same boat. So if you're someone who is wondering how you go about budgeting with variable income and when you don't know where or when your next paycheck is going to come from, this is the budgeting method for you, because you're not focusing on your next paycheck. You are just focusing on what money do I have now and what does this money need to do for me until I get paid again. That doesn't mean you need to know exactly when you get paid or how much you're going to get paid. It just means that you are evaluating all of your expenses and taking a look at what is most important to fund right now. Creating a plan for your money that you have on hand and assigning it to specific goals and categories, make sure that your spending is aligned with your values and your financial goals, but it also makes sure that your spending and your budget is realistic. Because you know that feeling when payday hits and you see all of that money in your bank account and it automatically makes you feel like you are rolling in it and that you can afford all of these things that you thought yesterday you could never afford. And then what happens is that a few days later, you've spent a lot of your money and you realize, oh shit, I still have all of these bills that are due, and now I pretty much only have $1 or a negative account in my balance until I get paid again. If you know this feeling, no judgment. I too know this feeling very well. And the reason that I love YNAB is because this one simple rule prevents that from happening. Because you're only budgeting the money that you have on hand and you're looking at all of your categories, you know what is coming up and what expenses you have to fund with that money until you get more money. You are looking at your budget as a whole rather than just looking at the amount of money that you have in your bank account and feeling like you are rich. I always like to refer to it as I don't look at my bank account to tell me what money I have to spend. I look at my budget because I might have a lot of money in my bank account, which makes me feel like I could go and splurge on that weekend vacation or that nice new bag that I have been wanting. But then when I look at my budget, I come back to the reality and see, oh wait, this money already has a job. It has to pay for rent, utilities, gas, groceries, and then only a small chunk of it can actually go toward fun money. This is a humbling experience, yes, but it is also a really important one because it makes you be very realistic with what you can actually afford. And this also means that you don't need to wait until the first of the month or your next paycheck to start budgeting, because you're only ever budgeting the money you have on hand. If you just got paid, you can start budgeting with YNAB, or if you don't get paid for the foreseeable future, you can also still start budgeting with YNAB's method or with any zero-based budget. This method is also really helpful if you don't have a source of income right now and you are just trying to live as long as you can off of the money that you have on hand. This budget is going to help you conceptualize and know what you are working with. Because I know the feeling of really being into the idea of, okay, I am finally going to get on track with my finances and get a hold of what is going on here and finally get on a budget, just to realize the budgeting system I planned on using requires me to have been paid today or start on the first of the month. And let's be honest, by the time those two things happen, if I haven't already committed to a budget, I'm probably not going to start using it. And giving every single dollar a job prevents that from happening and gives you the most control that you can over your finances. Rule number 2, embracing your true expenses. Another life changer for me, honestly. True expenses are YNAB's version of sinking funds. I have a video about sinking funds up here, but basically all they are those non-monthly expenses that you still need to include in your budget on a monthly basis. I like to give some examples. I feel like that's the easiest to comprehend what true expenses or sinking funds are. These are things like holidays or car repairs. You might not know exactly how much you're going to spend or when that thing is going to happen, but you know it's coming eventually. So if you can break it down into monthly payments or monthly savings goals, it is a lot easier for you to tackle that expense when it does finally come. Because here's the typical scenario of what can happen if you don't embrace your true expenses inside of your budget. Which, again, no judgment, I did this for the longest time. You know that feeling when you're driving along one day and then suddenly you see the dreaded check engine light come on and the panic starts to creep in because you're only halfway through the month, you have no money left in your bank account, you still have that utility bill that is due next week, you don't have any gas in your car, and your fridge is empty, and you have no idea how you're going to afford this catastrophe. So you take it in, inevitably it ends up being some stupid thing that cost you like $500-$600, and since you didn't plan for this, you don't have the money on hand, you end up having to put it on a credit card, hoping that you can pay it back before that bill comes due. Spoiler alert, you probably can't afford to pay off that credit card bill in full. So what if instead you prepared for that expense? Instead, whenever you're driving along and that dreaded check engine light comes on, you have a moment of panic before a breath of fresh air of reality because you realized that you have been preparing for this moment. You didn't know it was going to happen today. You don't know what's wrong with your car, so you don't know how much it's going to cost you. But every month you have been setting aside a little bit of money inside of a car repairs fund, so you have a chunk of money to put toward this expense. You are in a much better situation because past you took care of future you. Maybe you got lucky and for the last 10 months you've been putting aside $50 inside of a car repair fund and you have that $500 you need to fix whatever is wrong with your car. Or maybe you haven't saved up that amount of money and you only have $200 to put toward that $500 repair. Even if you can't cover it in full, having something saved is a lot better than having nothing. The whole idea of rule number 2 of embracing your true expenses is just recognizing the inevitable fact that life is more than just those recurring monthly expenses. And there are true expenses in your life that you are going to have to pay for that usually cost more money but don't happen quite as often. And rather than ignoring those and hoping for the best when they come, you embrace them and start breaking them down into monthly payments that you can put toward those expenses. Other true expenses that you might need inside of your budget are a new phone, a new car, vacations, the 3-week summer camp so you get some peace and quiet away from your kids, daycare, back to school, birthdays, gift giving, holidays, whatever it is. Some true expenses are easier to break down than others. If I know that I need $1,000 for summer camp in 10 months, I know that I need to save $100 a month until that day comes. But with car repairs, holidays, or vacations, you might not have an exact amount or an exact day planned. That's when you take a look at your budget and see what is realistic for you to set aside every month to start building up those savings goals. And don't worry if you get it wrong the first few times. I have gotten it wrong many times, and as you budget, and you start to get used to what your true expenses are, you will be more prepared and be able to set aside more realistic amounts toward those things to make sure that future you is taken care of. And don't panic if you do happen to overspend, because YNAB has you covered with rule number 3. Rule 3 is rolling with the punches. To be perfectly honest with you, I was about to again say this one was life-changing for me, but then I realized I have said that for the first 2, so I think it's safe to assume that all 4 of these rules were life-changing for me. Roll with the punches is the rule that says, hey, look, life happens. Life isn't perfect. Your budget isn't going to be either. And there are going to be times that you either forget about an expense, like that dreaded Amazon Prime fee that comes around once every year that somehow I still forget about, or you overspend, forget about a sinking fund, whatever it is. And rather than throwing the whole budget away because you messed up once, YNAB encourages you to roll with the punches and find somewhere to cover that overspending, learn from that, and move forward. No shame, no guilt, no reason to up and quit budgeting because you suck at it and you'll never get it right. It is part of budgeting to overspend and to have unexpected expenses. And I love that YNAB embraces that as reality, has it ingrained in its 3 rules that you can figure out a way to cover that and move forward. Your budget should be flexible and work for you, not the other way around. And for God's sake, you are allowed to change your budget. If you've been around here for any point in time, you know I change my budget all of the time. I changed it at New Year's, I changed it again. Half the time I move categories around, I stop spending money on one thing, I change how much I'm saving for another. And that is because life changes, I change, and our priorities change. So your budget should change with it. And there are times that I overspend or I go a week without tracking any of my expenses and then realize my budget is like completely messed up. And if I were to beat myself up over that and just declare that I sucked at budgeting, I know, inevitably cycle back into credit card debt and wasting away all of my money. Instead, since I found YNAB and it gives me the room to be a human and for my budget to change and for me to make mistakes, I have been able to continually move forward, readdress, learn from my mistakes, and move ahead. And now we are down to the last rule, rule number 4, age your money. Remember that situation we were talking about earlier where it's payday and you have tons of money and you are riding high, only to somehow end up with like $4.32 in your bank account until payday, which isn't until next Friday? Because yeah, same. This is the paycheck to paycheck cycle where the money that you are getting on payday is pretty much almost immediately spent on this week's expenses. Whether it's on essentials like gas, grocery, and a roof over your head, or on those non-essential extra things like iced coffee or going out with friends. A lot of us are stuck in the cycle where we are using the money we just got paid to afford all of these things. So in order to break out of that cycle and to feel more confident with your money, you need to do 2 things. The first is to build up your savings and those true expenses. The second is to try to create as much of a gap between the time that you earn a dollar to the time that you spend that same dollar. This is the concept that YNAB refers to as aging your money. So why is this important? Because the longer that you have between the time that you receive money to the time that you are spending that same money that you received, the more of a buffer that you have in your budget. And buffers are so important because if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you find yourself without a paycheck for a month, you could be really screwed because you were using last week's paycheck to fund this week's expenses. So if the next paycheck never comes, where are you going to get that money from? Whereas if you have aged your money and the money that you are earning today through today's paycheck is actually funding next month's expenses, you have a month of a buffer where if something happens to your income, you can still afford those things for the next month until you have to start worrying about where your money is going to come from again. This rule acts very similarly to your standard emergency fund, but with YNAB, rather than a standard emergency fund where you just kind of have like a lump sum of money that is equal to a certain amount of monthly expenses, like usually 3 to 6 months, with YNAB, you go ahead and try to get as far ahead in your budget as you can. So personally, if I am budgeting my paycheck today, my goal is that I've already covered this month's expenses. And since today is the first week of June, if I got paid today, I would actually be budgeting the expenses from the first or second week in July. Emergency funds and aging your money are both pretty much the same concept, just done in different ways. And I really like the YNAB app because it will help you navigate how to go about aging your money. It also keeps track of how old your money is. And generally speaking, they tell new budgeters to have a goal of aging your money by 30 days, which is basically like having a 1-month emergency fund where, like I mentioned before, today's paycheck in June is funding July's expenses. I already have a plan, if you guys end up liking this series, to do a whole video about aging your money, how to age your money, all of that. Let me know down in the comments below if that is something that you are interested in, and I will continue to include that in my roundup of YNAB videos. But in the meantime, I believe that they do have a video about it as well up on their YouTube channel, and I will link that up here if that actually exists. So here is our rundown of YNAB's 4 rules. Number 1, give every dollar a job. Number 2, embrace your true expenses. Number 3, roll with the punches. And number 4, age your money. Combined, these 4 rules are meant to make you as financially comfortable and confident as possible, while also understanding that you are a human being living in a messy world and things are going to happen. It is all about making your budget work for you, not the other way around. And if you want to see these 4 rules in action, I will link my Budget For Me videos up here. It is a series where I take your real numbers and make a budget from start to finish inside of YNAB, incorporating all of these rules. And again, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content. It also will let me know if you are interested in this YNAB Friday video series. And I really hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Bye.